We saw how to define a function, with arguments, how to pass values to the function via variables or passing directly the values, as well as we saw the variable scope within the function. But let's see, can we operate on files with the functions? So let's say we define a function which is going to open a file, and to this function we are going to pass a file name as a value, and we are going to return open file name comma r. So we want to open this file in a read mode, and there is only one return statement, which is open file name. Now let's create another function, read file, which is going to take file object as a value, and then it is going to return us the content of the file. Now let's define a file name as test.txt. Then we will be calling each one of those. So first let's open the file by calling open file function, to which we are going to pass this file name. Then we are going to call another function, read file, and we are going to pass file obj as a value parameter to it. Then let's just print the content. Before we execute, we need to make sure that we have the test.txt file ready. So I have created a file. Let's write some content in it. This is a first line. This is a second line. This is a third line. And this is a fourth line. Save it. Now we have that test.txt file. So now let's see whether we are able to successfully read the content using the function. So Python files and function, and it works perfectly fine. So it has read the entire content of the file. So this is where we can see that we can use file as a parameter to the functions and perform operations on the file content. So here let's create one more function, which is just going to close the file. Close file. Let's give file obj as a parameter, and since this is just going to close the file, it's not going to return anything. So file obj dot close. That's it. And then we can call it here close underscore file Python files and function. And yes, it did work without any issue. And here we can assume that it is successfully able to close the file. Now let's do one thing. We will create a new Python file where we are going to import all the functions which we have defined in this file and use them. So for that we will have to use an import statement. So our module name is files in function import. So the functions that we are going to import are open file, then read file, and close file. Then we are going to define one more function here. Let's say process file, which will take only one value, file name, and then it is going to call those functions one after the other. So let's say we call first the open. So for For that we need to define file obj equal to open file, and to which we are going to pass file name as a value. Then we want the content, which we are going to get from the file obj by calling a read file function. So we pass file underscore obj. Then we will close that file by passing this file obj as a parameter to the close file function, and at the last we are going to return the content. Now let's first define a file name equal to, let's say, test.txt, and we are going to call the process file function by passing the file name. Then we are going to, let's say, first let's put a message. Let's declare the content of the file name, and on the next line we are going to put star, which is 10 times. Let's put it here as well, and here we are going to, let's say, put hyphen 10 times, and after that print the content. So here we are importing. So this is the way we import the local files or the content of the another Python files. So every Python file that we declare is considered as a module, and hence when we import a module we give the name of the file, and then we give the functions or the objects that we want to call or we want to import in our program. Now let's execute our program. Say Python file processing.py. Oh, so if you remember, we were expecting 10 times star, which is there. We were expecting a line, the content of the file test.txt, which is perfect, then 10 times hyphen, then the content of the file, and then at the end 10 times star. So this content is printed properly, but what is this? Why is this coming? So here if you see, when we call the import statement, at that time interpreter goes to files in a function module or a file. It checks for all the functions that we want to import, whether they are present or not. So it will see, yes, there are these functions already defined, so it will import that. At the same time, it will go through the entire file, and wherever there is a code to execute, it will just execute that code, and hence it first printed these lines when it was importing, and then it executed rest of the code. Now let's verify that. So here I'll put a print statement which says, let's say, 10 times, and print 10 times. Okay, and in file processing.py we will add one more print statement before this. So let's call it print, and here we will say starting processing files. Okay, and now let's execute this program. So Python file processing.py. See here it clearly says that this block of code, which is present in file in a function.py file, is executed as soon as we start to import the functions from that file or a module. Then it starts executing our current program and then the entire output. Now to avoid this, There is a way using an if condition, but that we will see later on. Right now, let's comment this code. Let us just right now comment this entire block of code, and we have our output as it is. Now let's execute this program. Now let's call the file processing again, and yes, it works perfectly fine now. So this is how you can define functions in one file, import them in the another file, and then execute those functions. Now while executing those functions, you can put those function calls within some other function, like here you can see, and then execute them. Now here you can see I have completely encapsulated the way file is opened, read, and the closed. So that processing is not at all known to the process file function. What it knows is it can just call these functions or the commands and everything will work as per the expectation. So this is how you can encapsulate the processing.